Hey guys, here are the comics I read from this Wednesday's haul, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about each one. Some I have more to say about than others. Superior Spider-Man. I picked up issue 1, so I picked up issue 2 because I enjoyed issue 1. I'm not gonna be with this for the long haul as a monthly reader or weekly reader, or however, bi-weekly reader, because I enjoy them, but they don't seem worth $4 to me, as few comics do. I do think it's enjoyable, and I kind of like the way Dan Slott makes. So far, you could you can pick up this issue. You don't have to have read the one before to enjoy it. So each issue has a certain amount of completeness and yet a certain amount of carry on to what will happen next. I thought this was a great cover. Yes, everyone points out it's not really what happens in the book, and yet it captures kind of the spirit of the book. And I do feel I did enjoy just a lot of details about it, and I really enjoy Ryan Stegman's art. Although I think this issue felt a little more rushed than issue 1. Hopefully he can keep up the pace and be in a lot of issues. I know they have a rotating roster of artists planned. This book feels free to be cheesy, but manages to pull it off. So it's kind of fun to see Peter Parker's sort of ghost following everything around and commenting on what's happening and going, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, and the like. And, there's one part where obviously poor Peter Parker is aware of what Otto Octavius is masturbating over. And I really like that touch. And it's written in such a way that if you were a kid reading it, you wouldn't get that takeaway, but you would still understand the gist of it. So I think it's well done as a kind of mostly all ages comic book. And I like that. I think it makes a good entry comic book for people who are interested in superheroes. I feel like Dan Slott's sense of humor is maybe a little too heavy-handed for my ideal Spider-Man, but it's not my Spider-Man anymore, is it? It's a good series. I'll probably maybe buy one more issue, and then then probably look to pick up stuff in trades, or maybe even read stuff from the library in trades, depending on what I hear people saying about it. But I love Ryan Stegman art. Maybe I'll stick for the whole first Ryan Stegman arc. Maybe I'll buy the Ryan Stegman arcs in trades and read the other arcs from the library. We'll see. The Flash. The Flash is constantly up and down. I'd say, from being a 3-star comic to being a 4.5-star comic, and occasionally a 5-star comic. And this was mostly just an okay issue. The art's beautiful, but it's not like the very best. I mean, Francis Manapul has kind of created a high bar for himself, so maybe not every issue can hit that bar in terms of like the flashy layouts and everything. The art is solid and good, and it ends with a hint. It does a bunch of things where we're bringing in some long-standing plot threads all together. And that keeps me very interested because I've been reading Flash from the beginning of the New 52. So it's still a book I recommend, but it's funny. In the Great Legends contest, I listed it as my number 1 DC comic. My DC New 52 number 1s, my favorite changes all the time. It could have been Wonder Woman. It could have been Batman. It could have been a number of others. Justice League Dark. Frankenstein, if it still existed, I Vampire. But after reading this issue, I probably wouldn't have listed it as my number one. Let's see. Speaking of iVampire, the last issue, the first issue that didn't have Andres Sorrentino in it, had Dennis Calero, and it was actually an excellent issue. It was as good as any other iVampire issue. In fact, it was building wonderfully, and I was really enjoying it. This issue suddenly becomes a muddle. It's not horrible, and maybe I'm not remembering everything, and I'm not putting all the pieces together. Maybe it's sort of my fault. Maybe I should go back and reread an issue or two. But it's got 1, 2, 3, I believe three artists, 3 pencilers, and then an inker of some of the pages. So that shuffling of artists may be part of the problem of why it's so scattered and it's hard to put all the pieces together. It's missing something. And all 3 artists are good. And as some other people have noted, this colorist, Marcelo Maiello, the Brazilian colorist, does a fantastic job of kind of providing continuity. He's been the colorist all along. And he continues to give it a look that tells you it's iVampire all the way through, even as the artists change. But I would not recommend anyone jump on with this issue. I know that everything's supposed to wrap up before it ends. Is it issue 19 it's going to end on? So I will keep reading it through to the end. But I did have a moment while reading this issue where I thought, do I really want to keep reading it? This is getting to be a bit messy. But the last few issues were so great. I'm guessing it will all come together. Justice League Dark was really good, as was last issue. I didn't review last issue. And one thing I want to note, starting with last issue, is something changed in Michael Janin's art style. He had a very good art style, and it's even better to me now. It seems, I believe he doesn't use an inker, so either he's one of those people who did scans from pencils. It looks like he does a bunch of different media, maybe part digital, part pencil, part ink, and now it feels like he's gone with a heavier inking style around the edges of the characters and stuff, and it really helps a lot. And it brings all the different. It was an excellent artist before, but I think it's even better comic book art now. So if I were you, if you haven't been reading Justice League Dark, if you can get issue 15 and then get 16, this is an excellent read. When I hear like Mark over in England, MAW001, talk about how he's dropping all DC and, tell me what DC I should be reading. Mark, I think you should be reading Justice League Dark. If you haven't been, give that a try. But I don't quite go with your hatred of DC at all. So there may be reasons that you would hate Justice League Dark too, just as you hate a lot of other DC. And then mainstay of DC, Batman, beginning a new arc in Batman: The Dark Knight, written by Greg Hurwitz, who I read some excellent Zero issues by Greg Hurwitz. So I wanted to jump on with another arc, and drawn by Ethan Van Sciver. The art is very good, but I have a strong sense of the artist and the writer not clicking, or is there too much editorial interference going on here? Because the story doesn't flow, and it doesn't seem at all up to Greg Hurwitz, the Greg Hurwitz that I'd read before. And I wonder if something's going on in the background that's keeping him from performing at his best. It's almost like, parts of the script were cut out or something, or hastily pasted back together. I'll still pick up the next issue, but I'm not. I was thinking I would add this to my pull list if I liked this issue, and I don't like it quite enough to tell my comic book store to reserve copies for me. And maybe if the next issue picks up, I'll do that. There was one interesting thing where, as far as I could tell, Batman caused an explosion of a truck full of bad guys. And it was kind of clever how he did it. And meanwhile, the woman he saved is obviously like totally turned on by him. And I thought that was a clever touch. But there's like 8 or 10 guys in that van that just blew up. And that apparently was part of Batman's plan. Does Batman kill people? Or just not? He kills random henchmen who we're not paying attention to, but makes a big deal about not killing the supervillains. I don't know. That just bothered me a little bit. Okay, and here is one of my favorite books of the week. I think my 2 favorite books of the week were these 2. Dollar Bill does not deserve to be my favorite book of the week. It has kind of a light-hearted, meaningless script by Len Wein that doesn't tell us anything new that we couldn't have already gleaned from Darwin Cook's Minutemen. This is kind of like a footnote to Cook's Minutemen. It doesn't contain anything new in it at all. And I'm going to spoil it a bit. At the end, so yeah, if you care, fast forward until I put down this book. At the end, or until I open the book up, at the end he turns out to be narrating from the grave, and it's really silly. There's nothing here special about Dollar Bill. It's a light read, breezy and kind of fun. But what makes it great is the artwork by Steve Rude. I just can't get enough Steve Rude artwork. He definitely, he's a less is more kind of person. He could probably put in all the detail he wants. I mean, he painted this cover, but he chooses simple lines. But every figure, every detail to me is just right, and it all says Steve Rude. No one else could have done it. And it's a marvel to look at this book. I'm sure I'm going to be rereading it visually for weeks. I can't tell you how great I think Steve Rude artwork is. And I know that Nexus is slowly going to be coming back, and I really look forward to that. Nexus is the book that Steve Rude, really made his name on and put his all into. An early independent comic book success in the 80s. So yeah, I'm crazy about this book because. And even though it's light fluff in terms of the work Len Wein did, Steve Rude just kicked ass. So this is like a truly great retro Steve Rude superhero book. Just a feast for the eyes. Well worth the money because of the artwork. And thankfully, no pirate story at the back. So just 26 pages of story. And I would love just to get lots of Steve Rude. Any editors out there, beg Steve Rude to... I hear Steve Rude, he has really high standards and morals about who he works with. So in a way I was a bit surprised to see him with Before Watchmen, since it's controversial in terms of creators' rights and such. I'm not sure what his thinking was there. Because I know he's really strong in creators keeping their rights. Maybe he just was looking for a chance to work with Len Wein, or a chance to work on these characters. But anyway, I'm glad he did it. As before Watchmen winds down, I now don't feel bad at all, about Alan Moore not wanting them to do it. I don't think it's hurt Watchmen, and to a certain extent, it just makes us go back to the original Watchmen. And a lot of fun, or some fun comic books came out of it. The only one I followed to the end was Minutemen. I may pick up more in trade. But it's a weird, comic book business is weird, because if you think about it, Len Wein is an amazing, didn't he create Wolverine? Didn't he create Swamp Thing? Didn't he create the new X-Men, the X-Men as we know it now? And tons of other stuff that he's created, but I never hear about him complaining or being bothered. And he was the editor on Watchmen. Alan Moore totally gutted and undid everything Len Wein did for Swamp Thing, and I've never heard Len Wein complain, Alan Moore ruined my vision of Swamp Thing. So I wonder, it would be great to, have someone like Len Wein half drunk and telling you the truth of what he thinks about everything. But anyhow, Len Wein is this just workman-like creator in comics who's produced a lot of stuff. But anyhow, this, if you're someone who can go more for the art than the story, there's nothing wrong with the story, but it's just a meaningless story. But if you can love art, in an okay story, then this is, the issue of the week. Very good art and good story is in this Hawkeye Hurricane Sandy issue. And I felt a little dubious because usually when they're doing a special issue for some humanitarian cause or whatever, the writing suffers. But here, Matt Fraction came through, and his guest artist came through. So we have a really great indie-style story about the two Hawkeyes and stuff they went through at during Hurricane Sandy. And they go for smaller stories. They don't try to hit you over the head with the hugeness of the disaster or anything like that. The first story with Clint Barton could have almost been like a Harvey Pekar story or something. It just had the feel of real life quirkiness, and I really enjoyed reading it, even though I was expecting to be really annoyed by this issue. I do think the thing about Matt Fraction giving his royalties to the Red Cross is a little overblown, because in here it says that he's giving part of his share of the royalties for this issue to the Red Cross. And what does that mean? It might mean he's giving $500 to the Red Cross. I don't know. And $500 is more than I gave. I think I gave $50. But still, it's not like this amazing charity issue. I guess I wish it was. I don't know. Does the Red Cross need a lot more money still for helping people in the hurricane? It certainly is awful when these huge forces of nature destroy people's homes and lives. And maybe this keeps things like that in the news, and we will all give a little more to Hurricane Sandy relief funds. I should look into that. This awesome cover also. This issue was even further away from regular Marvel superhero stuff than ever. I wonder how the sales are going. I hope it keeps going. I enjoy it a lot. So that's it for now. Another 20-minute video. I keep thinking I'm going to do like a 12-minute video someday. Talk to you all later.